You survive a magical death match and a forest ambush, only to realize your military training is facing a new kind of ballistics. In the Winter Court, a forged document is more lethal than a spiked hammer, and an immortal mean girl is more dangerous than a monster. Your instincts automatically catalog the 14 visible exits in the Grand Hall, but the environment is a different kind of combat zone. Lady Lysandra Thorne has spent centuries planning to be the Winter Prince's bride, and she views your arrival as a tactical disaster that must be corrected. Lysandra invites you to a private salon for tea, attempting to plant seeds of doubt about your husband and your friend, Eric's. You recognize the technique from insurgent interrogation files. She is executing a psychological operation, placing verbal landmines designed to isolate you from your only allies. Surviving the palace means treating every glittering reception like an active, hostile minefield. The trap detonates during a war chamber meeting when a senior advisor produces a stack of intercepted parchments. He claims these are treasonous letters from Eric's, conspiring with the Autumn Court to use you as political leverage. The council erupts into a demand for execution. They aren't looking for proof. They are reacting to the social authority of the accuser, allowing their emotions to dictate the legality of the proceedings. You tune out the screaming nobles and focus entirely on the physical evidence. Your tactical mind scans the parchment for the flaws that an immortal's hubris would inevitably overlook. This internal arrogance prevents the Fae leaders from critically examining the evidence, leaving the court vulnerable to a threat sitting comfortably within its own walls. You begin a silent, clinical assessment of the evidence, applying standard counterintelligence metrics to the physical properties of the scrolls. This diagram shows the specific anomalies in the forgery. The wax seal is misaligned by 5 degrees, and the ink lacks the iridescent shimmer of genuine boundary magic. Smuggled documents show wear from travel, yet these borders are pristine. This parchment never left the palace. You need to find the person who manufactured the documents. You corner a servant named Rhymefrost in an alcove, using the tone you reserved for fresh military recruits. You don't need threats. You simply offer him a way to avoid being the fall guy for high treason. When you explain that his silence makes him a co-conspirator in a capital crime, he breaks, confessing that he saw Lysandra practicing with forbidden inks. No matter how powerful the immortal, their conspiracies still rely on amateur forgeries and vulnerable human assets. You conduct a night raid on Lysandra's chambers, sweeping the space for chemical ink odors. You methodically test the floorboards until you feel the slight give of a board that isn't properly seated. Lysandra returns early, her footsteps echoing in the outer room. You calculate the risks and slide into the shadows behind a massive ice sculpture of a winter wolf, managing your breath until she leaves. Prying up the board reveals several scraps of parchment covered in practice attempts at Eric's signature, and a handwritten draft of the exact accusations presented to the council. In the dungeon, Eric's is ready to accept a death sentence to protect your reputation. You refuse the sacrifice, returning to the royal study to map out a multi-stage courtroom ambush that treats the upcoming trial like a siege. Physical evidence is only effective if it is deployed with absolute, devastating tactical timing. The Grand Hall is packed for the trial. Lysandra delivers an elaborate performance of sorrow, weaving fractional truths into a fiction designed to whip the nobility into a frenzy. You step forward, your boots ringing against the black ice, shattering court protocol by declaring the documents are fakes. You approach the evidence pedestal and dismantle the forgery in front of the court. You point out the flat ink and the pristine edges of the paper, using the physical data to strip the credibility from the council's previous assumptions. You bring in Rhymefrost to testify and present the sketches found beneath Lysandra's floorboard, pinning the forgery directly to her. Undeniable, physically verifiable evidence is the only weapon that can break the narrative armor of a socially untouchable opponent. The pressure of the logical evidence causes Lysandra's mask to snap. She screams at the assembly, confessing her hatred and her resentment over losing the prince to a human. The Winter Prince sentences her to strict confinement, ending the threat to Eric's and stabilizing your position in the court. Despite their magic and long lives, these immortals make the exact same arrogant mistakes as any desperate insurgent. When you treat a royal court like a combat zone and use logic as your primary weapon, you can survive a magical frame-up simply by being the best detective in the room.